Hey everybody. So today I just felt like making, a social justice video. I feel like it's appropriate, and I could just get it off of my chest. So recently there have been some demonstrations, some protests uh, at a lot of state capitals protesting stay-at-home orders in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, and um, there's lots of interesting news stories that have come out of this, like the person in North Carolina who organized the event actually had COVID 19 when she was organizing it. Uh, and just if you take a look at the the character that you can see in all the pictures of these protests and the video clips and whatnot, it's very interesting. But I think the biggest thing that interests me is that uh, these protests are pretty much proof of white privilege. Because if it were black people with all of those guns holding a protest at the state capitol, they would have been mowed down by a SWAT team. But since it was a bunch of white people, they uh, they kept their distance. They didn't call in the National Guard to put down the rebellion. They didn't. They didn't really get too involved in telling them to disperse because they were breaking lawful orders from the governor. They just kind of had a small police presence around it, and they were looking at them like, look, we're a bit outgunned, you know. So what I want to say is just as putting my head above the parapet, come at me, bro. I think everyone who was part of that protest should be charged with breaking a lawful order from the governor. Um, Additionally, I would like all of the footage and photographs of that protest in my state that happened at the Capitol building in Denver to be scoured over by investigators. I want them to use digital facial recognition on all the video and identify everyone who was there, who knew that they were breaking that lawful order and decided to arm themselves in case the police were going to try to enforce that lawful order, basically baiting the police into a firefight that thankfully did not happen. So, uh, rather than having the police, that I care about a lot, go in and try to disperse them, I feel like they did the right thing by just letting it pass on its own and not endangering any police officers in trying to disperse it because they were heavily outgunned. But I think that uh, some investigators need to identify each one of them, and then they need to put out arrest warrants for them. And hopefully, they'll go to a grand jury and get like sealed indictments so that you know there isn't some big second wave of protesters who all show up to shoot up the Capitol building. But hopefully, they can, you know, cut some arrest warrants and round them all up individually. You know, because they weren't wearing masks, like was also in the order. There was the order to stay at home, the order to wear masks in public. There was the order to social distance. They were breaking it all, right? So um, Yeah. But there's other laws that I would want them to tack on when they have the video evidence of this, right? Because these people were not responsibly using their firearms, and maybe they shouldn't have them. So, first is the rest of Colorado might be open carry, but Denver is not. And there was actually a court ruling on this. It's Denver versus the state of Colorado, and it said that they made the home rule law, and the home rule law says that Denver gets to restrict open carry within its own city because of how dense the urban population is and how hard it is to police. You know, because it basically endangers police officers. So, um, in the city limits of Denver, you're not allowed to open carry. These guys were like open carry as much as we can, right? Also, uh, you're not allowed to have a loaded gun out in public. That's another law that we have in in Denver. Um, you're not allowed to have a loaded rifle. If you were, say, caught on video, uh, you know, emptying the chamber, and just you open it up, and a bullet just happened to fly out, proving on camera that you did have it loaded, then I think that that should be an extra charge for that person who was on camera, obviously with loaded rifle. Um, you're also not allowed to have loaded weapons or rifles in the front of your car in Denver. If you're transporting, it has to be in the trunk, in the boot. And everybody who was guilty of that, I think they should add that on. You're not allowed to have firearms on government property in Denver. That's the parks, the courthouses, the 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 Capitol building. Um, it's amazing to me that the white privilege is such that if a black man were to ball up his fist and stare angrily at a cop, he could actually get charged with simple assault and get a beat down. But these guys come out with guns, basically saying, "Come try us. We're going to break these laws," and they're allowed to go unpunished. It's amazing. The anyways, if you're from another state, this is an interesting one. Like, say somebody came from Wyoming and they were open carrying in Colorado, and there's no reciprocal agreement between those states. It's also against the law, and I would tack that on. Here's the reason why I'm tacking all this on. Like, anything that they did wrong in that video, I want them charged with. Like, bullet pointed, like every little thing, right? Because first gun offense is a misdemeanor in Colorado. Second one, it becomes a felony. And in Colorado, felons are not allowed to own firearms. So the whole point I'm getting at is these guys can't responsibly own their firearms. They have to go brandish them out in public, daring the police to get into a firefight with them. They don't need to have them anymore. They're scaring the public. They're unduly pressuring the lawmakers in our state to reopen the state from stay-at-home orders, which is going to kill more people than if we had kept those stay-at-home orders in place. And yeah, I think they all need to have their comeuppance. But Not in an arena where there's 300 of them and there's only as many cops as we still have around that haven't been sent home because of coronavirus. I don't want to endanger the cops. I want them to track them, and then when they're using the restroom in Walmart, I want the SWAT team in there where it's the safest takedown, and then round them all up and give them their charges. They deserve it. You know, don't do the crime if you can't do the time, and maybe uh, if you're going to misuse a gun like that, you don't need to be having one. I think the scariest of all the videos that I've seen was today. Quintica Ted he forwarded me a video of the one in Michigan, and how with assault rifles, uh, with all the different bells and whistles on them, to make them look especially scary, and with the whole get up of bulletproof vests and everything. These guys stormed into the Capitol building, and there was a line of police officers just protecting the area where the elevators were, and they were getting yelled at, and these protesters were like, "You should feel ashamed of yourselves," right in front of the cops. I'd especially say that those people were threatening peace officers, and they need to have that tacked on as well. You know, um, see it in the chat. Somebody says that I'm a big fan of Combi's Chinese tactics. No, no. I want everybody to get out of this alive. And there are people who are so obsessed with whether or not something could be fascist or Chinese communist or whatnot that they're willing to flagrantly break the law and brandish guns to bait cops into a firefight. And wherever that happens, I really hope that they're tracked, and when they least expect it, when they're out in their outhouse, the cops break down the door and take them on in for their charges.